secret behind this tweet. This is full spoiler alert. I made these cookies and they were so bad, and I really pride myself. See, I talk about what a good baker I am and what a good cook I am, but it's great in interviews because nobody's actually trying your food. They can't really fact check it. So everybody's like, oh, Blake, you're such a great chef. Tell me about that. And they have no idea what I can just be told. Ryan wasn't even in town, and then I just posted this and made it seem like he made terrible, ugly cookies.
Hi, besties. It's August 20th. Do you know what that means? We are 5 days removed from the substantial production of documents date due for all third-party subpoenas, which means that Blake Lively can no longer send out random subpoenas to anyone unless she gets a court order and she has good cause, because all of the subpoenas she has issued had to have been responded to by the 15th. She has until Friday to file motions to compel for any of the remaining outstanding subpoenas that have not been complied with. She has 2 more days to file documents to the court and say, listen, I want these people to give me documents. But she can no longer issue any subpoenas unless she has good cause and gets approval from the court, because it's past the deadline. And if you didn't know this, I actually did a video yesterday, and Brian Friedman's firm / Kevin Fritz let the court know that despite Blake Lively subpoenaing 107 content creators, not any single creator provided any evidence to Blake that proved that Mr. Friedman had orchestrated a retaliation campaign and paid creators to make videos about her. To the best of their knowledge, they were told that none of it came back with any evidence. She wasted that many people's time. She wasted that many people's money. And it made me think about all of those quotes that her team put out so arrogantly back in February and in March and in June and July, all about how they had all of the evidence in the world, and now, they can't wait to get to trial because their claims are going to get proven, right? And there's overwhelming evidence that, this smear campaign happened and that harassment happened on the set. Back in January, the repeated narrative that was happening in the media by her team was that this was a sexual harassment case. But we haven't heard about that in a long time. We haven't heard her actually talk about the sexual harassment. And now we know, according to text messages that she dumped on the docket, that the only complaint she made to anyone at Sony was related to a comment about Justin saying an outfit that Lily was wearing was sexy because that was the look that Blake had told him she wanted Lily to go for. And Jenny and Blake reported him to HR for that. Okay, so that's the good news. No more subpoenas, no more of that. And if you didn't see that in the beginning of this episode, that's a video of Blake, one of many, where she's doing a bit, but she's doing interviews where she lets people know that she loves to lie in interviews because journalists can't fact check. She has done so many interviews where she gets off on and laughs about how she lies in interviews because she thinks it's funny that no one can check what she says. So she can say whatever she wants, and it's hilarious. She often admits in her interviews to being extremely manipulative, doing things in revenge. There she apparently blamed Ryan for making ugly cookies because she was mad at him for going out of town. Just dumb things that she admits to doing. And so I always say, if someone tells you who they are, you should believe them. So Blake doesn't have any evidence of Brian Friedman orchestrating the smear campaign, but I'm sure that's not going to stop her in her quest to win this lawsuit that she utterly cannot win. And thanks to Perez Hilton making a note to the judge about how abusive the court docket had become and how embarrassing it was to the wider public to see what Lively was doing on the docket, suddenly, with the subpoenas deadline and the document production deadline now passed, and Blake not being able to terrorize anyone else about compelling with her production of the Wayfair parties, and having only 2 more days to file motions to compel to any of the other third parties she feels like harassing, Blake has suddenly gone silent. Silent on the docket. Nothing has been posted by her team on this lawsuit's docket since last Friday. If you consider the fact that Blake has rarely gone less than a day of not filing something on this court docket and has tried to keep going nonstop and using the docket to promote PR for her case, suddenly, after an order from the judge and the deadline passed, and 2 orders actually that have made everything completely sobering for her. Some of you didn't believe me that it was a scolding for her to have to redact documents, but it was, because instead of her team having to work on what it was that they were working on, they had to go back in time and go through the docket and find all the documents that they had improperly put on this docket, exposing personal information to people after Blake herself fought for a protective order to protect her private information. And the judge told Lively alone, that she needed to go back and redact because it was her that was doing this and that had the problem doing this. She was the one that gloated about the protective order and how she was going to protect everyone. And yet she was the one that put everyone at risk. Okay. And then after the court being notified multiple times of one of her fans, trying to set a fire and kidnap Steve Sorowitz's daughter, right? She suddenly is silent this week. Nothing. She doesn't have any more tricks up her sleeve, apparently, outside of responding to Perez Hilton and Andy Signor's motions to quash outside of the state in Florida and in Nevada. But on this docket, it's like radio silence outside of what happened with Isabella Ferrer. All right. Blake didn't run to the, judge on Monday and immediately demand they strike, the response for sanctions of them, putting stuff on the docket that wasn't becoming to Blake or her team, actually quite embarrassing her to the judge. This is a point in the case, and I can tell you from my own experience, and I've gone through more lawsuits than Lively, that once the discovery deadline hits, this is when the sobering reality is of what are you going to do with your lawsuit. If you are 8 months into a case and you still cannot prove that you were smeared, what are you going to do? You can't bring a case forward. You can't bring a case forward if you don't have evidence. You can try, but you're not going to win. And the arrogance that Blake's team had in the beginning, where they were saying they had all this evidence, they couldn't wait to share it. More recently, their letters to the judge about compelling production have felt more like they're crying about how they don't have the evidence to prove their case and yelling at people about how their non-compliance in discovery is making it so, again, she will be able to not trace the untraceable of the campaign against her. A stark contrast to where we were in the beginning. And then she was dealt another blow because Baldoni responded to Isabella. Wayfair has sent a message this week, and it's pretty clear. And it's that they are paying attention to the orders that the judge gave about not being abusive on the court docket, not calling names, not leveling ridiculous allegations, being respectful and not resorting to name calling or ad hominem attacks or vitriol in filings. They are responding in a very deliberate way, not only to Blake, but to anyone on Blake's side, that now there's finally an order here that if you keep this up, there's going to be contempt. And some of you yesterday were like, your title was clickbait. No, it's not clickbait. If a judge puts an order in that if you don't stick to an order, so his order is you all need to stop and act appropriate on this docket. And if you violate, I will put you in contempt. Well, how do you violate? Someone has to file a motion for contempt. Any single one of them at any time can file a motion against Lively and say, motion for contempt, which includes sanctions, which means she doesn't just get to willy-nilly post abusive stuff and attack Friedman and Baldoni anymore. And then this is the second notice that they've put on Blake and her supporters, because I'm assuming Isabella is a supporter. Because in the very opening of the letter from a couple days ago, and I realize I'm not the first to report this, but it says, we write in response to her opposition to our motion to serve her by alternative means. The opposition is primarily an inappropriate attack upon Baldoni and his counsel in violation of the order dated on August 8th. In violation. Do you know what that means? In violation. They're telling the court, this attorney violated your court order. That's a notice to the judge about the behavior in that letter and that motion. And if the judge agrees, they can sanction the attorneys for error. Relating to matters not before the court and irrelevant to whether Ms. Ferrer should be served via alternative means. And do you remember how I said none of this has anything to do with her being served? After she completed her work on the film, she expressed her gratitude to Mr. Baldoni, stating that she had an incredible experience and praised him for creating a comfortable, safe space for her. They go on to say that Lively herself is the one that identified Isabella as a witness. And it was Lively herself, when she provided Isabella's name on her disclosures, gave an address for where Isabella lives. So they were blaming them. Ferrer was blaming them for subpoenaing her, but it was really Lively that brought her into the case. And they remind her that it was Lively that issued the subpoena, and she was represented by Mr. Mitchellman, and Mr. Mitchellman accepted service for the subpoena on her behalf without objection. In July, Wayfair parties subpoenaed her for documents that she either neglected to produce or were not requested by Miss Lively's subpoena. The Wayfair parties twice requested that he accept service, which is a common professional courtesy. He ignored their requests. He prepared and filed a robust opposition to the motion for alternative service, most of which does not pertain to service, without explaining why he refused to accept service of the Wayfair party's subpoena or why his client is so reticent to testify. He seems more focused on getting paid on his fees. Ironically, his action unnecessarily increased those fees by creating issues where none should exist. So they said and told the court they took effort to serve her. They went off an address and they did their diligence in finding the addresses. They didn't derive them out of thin air. They thought the appropriate person to ask about the subpoena would be to her attorney. And this is where it gets serious. The opposition alleges that in attempting personal service, after her lawyer refused to accept service on her behalf, Mr. Baldoni is harassing her and attempting to draw her deeper into litigation and disputes that she's done her best to avoid. It was not the Wayfair parties who first subpoenaed Miss Ferrer. It was Miss Lively. And again, Mr. Mitchellman appears to have accepted service of her subpoena without objection. Miss Lively should not be permitted to obtain discovery from Miss Ferrer, while Miss Ferrer and her counsel frustrates all efforts by the Wayfair parties to obtain discovery critical to the preparation of their defense. Because Miss Ferrer is calling him an abuser and a harasser and all of these things, Justin Baldoni is, again, waving the white flag, and he's putting it down, and he's like, yo, if you don't want to be a part of this case, fine. We will drop our subpoena, right? If you don't want to be a part of it. So they are willing to stipulate that none of the parties will use any of the communication to and from or concerning Miss Ferrer's apparent desire to avoid involvement in litigation and trial. If the other parties decline to enter into such stipulation and Miss Ferrer and her counsel continue to resist service The court should enter an order excluding Ms. Ferrer as a witness and excluding the use of any communication to and from or concerning Ms. Ferrer in any manner in this action. They are saying that if she doesn't accept service and she doesn't want to be a part of it, that's fine. Then she doesn't get to be a witness for anyone. And they will withdraw everything. And then they want the court and Lively to agree that's fine. We won't use Ferrer for anything since she doesn't want to be involved. And they don't want to harass her and make her feel like she's being harassed. So they'll let her get out since she doesn't want to be in it. This makes Blake Lively have to pick. Is she going to continue on with Ferrer and bring her deeper into this case? Or is she going to stipulate and drop it? And he says if they don't stipulate and Miss Ferrer doesn't accept the subpoena, then he wants the court to order that she won't be included. And I think it's, it puts the ball in Blake's court. It forces Blake to decide, am I going to look like I'm the one that's forcing her into something she doesn't want to be involved in, right? So Justin's like, I'm out. If you don't want to be a part, fine. Then you shouldn't be a witness. But Blake, for whatever reason, wants Isabella to be involved in this and thinks that Isabella has something to offer, even though as far as Baldoni is concerned, when Isabella was on the set with him, there were no problems, there were no complaints, and she said that she had a great experience. And then only after the fact, and once she got close to Lively, now she suddenly is calling him a harasser because he's subpoenaing her even though she complied with Lively's subpoena. It's just ridiculous, honestly. And I don't think Isabella has anything to offer, if you want me to be honest. I don't think she has anything that she can offer outside of telling Baldoni that it was Blake that put these ideas in her head. And perhaps that's why she doesn't want to answer a subpoena to him, because she doesn't want to give him any of the text messages or the communications between her and Blake that show Blake manipulating her. Or maybe she lied to Blake, or maybe Blake lied to her. But obviously, they didn't get what Blake got when Isabella was subpoenaed, and they're looking for stuff that they didn't get, that they need, that they believe is for a defense, because it was Blake that said there were other women on this set and cast that were going to prove that they had a bad experience with him. But if she doesn't have that to give, then it makes her look like a fool, makes Blake look like a fool, and this puts it in Blake's court. And also telling Isabella, like, if you go down this, the judge, you should violate this. This is a violation. And it sounds like anytime something like this is filed on a docket, the Wayfair is going to remind the judge what they're doing, which is probably why Blake is suddenly silent, because they saw the response on Monday and now it's in front of the judge. And they can respond and say, whatever, it's irrelevant. Ignore it, judge. They're a bunch of liars, but it's still on the docket and it's still in front of the judge. They can spin it whatever they want, but it's still a part of the case now. And Wayfair is not backing down. It's obvious. So Blake, she's lost her ability to abuse them through the court docket. She's lost her ability to abusively subpoena people now. And so now she needs to figure out what she's going to do. And that's why I said last week, these were not good rulings. And this is good, a really good week for Wayfair, even though we don't like Judge Lyman's rulings all the time. At least we know that Wayfair has made it clear to Blake they're not going to lay down. So what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed. And please click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching.